On the next episode of Painting and Travel, Sarah takes a rescue dog to play on a pet-friendly Florida beach. While using acrylics, Roger paints a portrait of a friend's Yorkshire Terrier.
Today I'm going to do a painting of this small dog. It's an 8 by 10 inch board or thereabouts. I have not covered it with burnt sienna as I usually do. I just grabbed the board off the shelf back here and didn't really take the time to coat it with burnt sienna. But since the dog is pretty much the color of burnt sienna, I'm going to start by putting on a lot of that color. On my palette I have titanium white, alizarin crimson, Indian yellow, ultramarine blue, and I have 3 earth colors: burnt sienna, burnt umber, and yellow ochre. Later on, Sarah will talk with a veterinarian, and then we'll head off to a pet-friendly beach. Well, I'm going to get started. I'm going to take a larger brush and tone my board now, because I didn't do it earlier. And I have drawn this little puppy on here. Well, he's not a little puppy, he's very old actually. I've drawn it on here in pencil, and I'm still able to see these lines through the wash of burnt sienna. I'm getting a little paint on my board here, it doesn't matter. This is varnish. When I get finished, I can wipe that off. If it sticks on there, I just take a little bit of rubbing alcohol. That takes it right off. I'm going to start with some dark colors, burnt umber and ultramarine blue. And I'll start with these dark areas back in here. I'm going to try and let my brushwork do a lot of the work here for me, instead of trying to indicate and paint every last hair on this dog. Try and let my rough brushwork indicate all that fur. This brush isn't a brand new brush, it's not terribly old, but it's getting slightly stiff, so actually that works pretty good for doing things like fur and hair. I think I'll put out one more color, cerulean blue. I think that mixed with the burnt sienna might make the tone I'm looking for in here. And I'm going to add some white at this point, because a lot of this little dog here is very light colored. But I want to keep my darks underneath to begin with as much as I can, so I can put the light colors over it after this dries. I took a number of photographs of this small dog, and out of, I think, the maybe 15 or 20 photographs I took, this one seemed to be the best. I can spray this occasionally. That will let my paints flow over this board easily. Now see, this burnt sienna, it's only been on here a couple of minutes, and it's dry enough now to paint over without picking up this burnt sienna. If I were to scrub hard on it, I think I could pick this color up again. But I'm just going over it lightly. I'll try some yellow ochre and white to get right in here in his muzzle. Touch of cerulean blue just to cut that back. Almost makes a green color. Just taking a very light touch here and dragging with this rather stiff brush. It's not terribly stiff. It's actually not real stiff, but slightly. So that will give me these lines here that look like little bits of fur. And right up near his nose, it's warmer, of a warm pinkish color. Now I'll take a small brush and I'll place his nose in here. Nice dark little nose. Now I'll put in his eye. I think this little guy is blind, as was our dog Silver, whom we lost not that long ago. There's a painting of Silver right back there. Now with this number 6 brush, I'm going to place a few more highlights on the dog. Right in here. This little guy's got hair going everywhere on the top of his head. I'm going to change the background in here. I'm going to make it a green color. Very light pale green with cerulean blue and yellow ochre. And since I have a lot of texture on this dog, I don't want a lot of texture back here. I want to keep that rather simple. So I'll flatten that out. I can have some variations in the color, but I think I want to keep it quite flat. So I can have some maybe cooler blues down here and warmer greens up here. I'll vary that some. I'll keep my brush straight up and down, perpendicular to the painting as I cut around the profile of the dog. That way it will maintain a little bit of this fur look. Of course, right here on his nose, that's a nice sharp edge. All the rest of that's very soft. I continuously spray these paintings so my paints will flow on easier. I think on this side I may make it slightly darker. Cerulean blue and burnt sienna. Make this slightly darker on this side. I'm just flipping that paint in here onto the fur. And then in a few minutes I'll do just the opposite. I'll take this brownish color here and I'll flip it out. I have a drop of water down here, and since this paint is still wet, if I take my brush and drag it over that, it'll pick up this blue paint and leave a spot. I could have just left that drop of water there and it would have dried and it would have been okay. I picked it up to show you what happens when you spray the board. Here's another drop of water here, and you see if I pick that up, I'll be left with a spot. So that's one of the dangers of spraying the painting all the time. You have to be careful of what you're going to paint over and what you're not going to paint over. This background here, I'm just going to mix up more of that same color. We'll just paint it in again. Here are some other animals that I have painted in the past. Some have been pets of ours, others have belonged to friends, and a few in here have been strays that we have run across while traveling. We came across this guy on one of our trips. Not sure if he was homeless or not, but he sure knew how to get us to share our lunch with him. This was one of my German shepherds, and a cat who actually liked to swim. Sometimes I have to work from very poor or multiple photographs in order to get a pose that looks natural. That was the case with this painting. Snowball sat here waiting for breakfast every morning, and this one would sometimes bring home a mouse as a treasured gift for the family. I painted this young German Shepherd in England and made high-pitched sounds with my voice to make him tip his head as I snapped a few photos. I think I prefer to paint portraits rather than full-length paintings. It seems to give a more personal quality to the paintings. Just doing this with a very light touch. Right now I'm trying to play back and forth with these areas of light and dark. Of course, I keep referencing my photograph over here too. Since this is a bluish, greenish blue background, it won't hurt to put some of these bluish colors into the dog here, just to create some harmony in this painting. Because if this dog was actually in this background, he would be catching a lot of reflected light of this color into his fur. I've started out many of these animal paintings similar to this one here of our dog Silver. He was a rescue dog, great little animal. We had him for many, many years. And I've started out pretty much in the same fashion as I'm working on this dog here. Well, let me get back to this painting and I'll concentrate on the colors. I'm careful not to put too much white in some of these areas that are very dark. I don't want it to get chalky. If I start putting white in everything, the painting will start to look weak and chalky. He's very grayish up in here. I'll spray that again. And with ultramarine blue and burnt umber, maybe a touch of alizarin crimson to keep that nice and warm, we'll replace some of these very dark areas. Kind of using a dry brush when I do this. I'm just jabbing at this to flip out those little indications of his fur into this picture, into the outside here. It's very important that I get this edge looking right. The fur in here is not quite as important to get exactly right, but I need to get the edge of the form because that's what's describing the shape of the dog, is this edge of the form. So I have to get the edge accurate. Just playing back and forth with the values to get the lights and the darks as best I can. Now I'm going to put a few touches of accents and highlights on his fur. We'll mix yellow ochre, burnt sienna to make a nice warm tone, nice light warm tone. And right down here over his nose, right in there, we've got a few pieces of fur going here and there. Now with all this texture in here, I can easily place a few small pieces of fur, individual little hairs of fur. And with all this other texture going on in here, it will appear as if there's a lot more detail in this painting than there actually is. At least that's the idea. And I'll try and keep this hair here focused where I want the center of interest to lie, which is up sort of in this area here. Crazy fur coming off the top of his head. I'm loading up my brush rather substantially and sort of thin so it flows off the edge of my brush. So then when I take this here and I flip the paint around, it'll come off and it won't be dragging. And again, spraying it helps that paint to flow off the end of my brush. To mix up a warmer color right now, because right here in his face, looking at my reference photo, it appears to be warmer in this area. And right under his eye. And put a highlight right across the top of his nose. This fur appears to be coming out the other side of his face. So I'll define that and make that a bit darker. That sort of defines the edge of his head here. Here I have some lighter colors in his ear. That will give this some more definition. And with my dark colors, the fur down here seems to be flipping out. We'll just give that some more texture. And with a small brush, we can add a few small hairs right back in there that extend out a bit further. With as dark a color as I can make, ultramarine blue, burnt umber, a bit of alizarin crimson, I'm going to go in and make this eye as dark as I possibly can. It's really a cute little dog. It's only about this big. And with a small brush, I'll put in a few details with this fur. Doesn't need too many. I don't want to get too many details going on in there, or I'll sort of lose the essence of the whole piece. I don't want to describe every little hair. It's going to be a better painting if I just suggest these. And it's not so much leaving it to somebody else's imagination. It really maintains the essence of this painting by keeping it a bit more painterly than trying to go into it in such detail that I'm describing every single hair. Right up in here, it's a little ragged. We will take this small brush, pull out a few more individual hairs right in there. Seeing those few individual hairs will help to describe all the rest of them that you sort of think you see in there, but actually they're not. They're just texture and brush strokes. So I'm only really painting a few of these hairs in there, but it'll give the indication that a lot more detail is in the painting than actually is. That's really a cute guy, isn't he? A couple more accents with some light color right on his nose. Keeping the focus up in that area. Very loose paint here. And I can just flip these a few little hairs here and there, and the paint will flow off the brush nicely and easily. One more highlight up here where some light is catching the edge of his ear. Just with an ever so light touch, I'm dragging just small amounts of paint on here. I'll put a small highlight right under his eye. I'm not seeing a highlight in his eye itself because, well, it could be it's just in shadow, but he is blind, so it tends to make the eye very dull looking. One more accent right across the top of his nose. Right there where the light's catching it. I'm going to make that just a bit wider. And since I have that nice white accent there, maybe I'll just echo that up here with a few more small pieces of hair. Well, I think that finishes this painting of this lovely little animal. I enjoyed painting it quite a bit. It's always nice to paint pets that mean something to other people. Well, now let's take one last close look.
This is Dr. Rachel Beckett. She's a veterinarian specializing in surgery for small animals, and I know that she loves dogs. So I'd like to find out a little bit more about dogs from your point of view. Sure. What makes a good pet? Is a rescue dog okay for taking in as a pet?
Rescue dogs can be a good idea, especially since, unfortunately, a lot of them are released because a new baby's come into the family or they're moving. When you're getting a rescue dog, to investigate what kind of breed works well with your family.
These dogs look very delicate, are they?
No, they're terrier breeds, and terriers are one of your hardier breeds. And these guys now, people are breeding toy versions or teacup versions, and they're very small, like 2 or 3 pounds, and those are a lot more delicate. But if you go with the breed standard, which these guys are, they're fairly tough little dogs. They are definitely from the terrier class.
My husband and I over the years have owned a number of different dogs, 1 or 2 purebred I think, but generally they were mixed breeds. And some found us, and others we found at shelters. And I think they can make as nice a pet as a purebred.
Oh, definitely, definitely. A lot of times your true mutt dogs are some of the healthiest because they don't have any of the recessive genes.
I have noticed that the mutts that we've had are less allergic to the flea bites than the purebred dogs. People love dogs because they're just fun to be around and they're good little buddies. What do you think?
I think they are. I think dogs want to please you. Dogs want to be with you. Dogs are a lot higher maintenance than cats because they depend on you for everything and they want to be with you. That's their whole goal. They're really, really attached to you and provide a lot of love and companionship.
In order to care properly for a pet, a dog, I think a few trips to the veterinarian are in order.
The big thing is that a dog ages much quicker than we do. So if they come once a year to see us, it's like you seeing your GP once every 7 to 10 years. And so it's very important. We'll pick up things like heart murmurs, early renal disease, other diseases that we can treat or at least help get along so the dog can live a longer, happier life.
Yes, well, I find the more attached you are to your dog, the longer you have your dog, the longer you want your dog to live because it becomes such a close companion, such a part of the family.
And people who take care of the dogs, we're seeing a lot longer life expectancy.
Well, I'm so glad you had a few minutes to talk with us. I've learned quite a bit. Thank you very much, Dr. Beckett.
No problem. It was a great pleasure. What do you guys think, huh?
This is Mick. Mick's a rescue dog. He came from an animal control shelter. They can't keep them all, unfortunately, but a lot of the little ones get taken in by the local shelters, which try very hard to find homes for him. Now, Mick loves to go to the beach. He's only been a few times so far, and I'm going to show you some things that come in handy when you go to the beach with a little dog. Mick always beats me up the stairs, and I'm on Anastasia Island, and I'm at Crescent Beach. We're not that far from St. Augustine, and Crescent Beach is one of the many beautiful beaches here. It goes for miles, and I'll show some of it to you in a few minutes. But I want to tell you this neat thing. It's a pet-friendly beach. You've got miles of pet-friendly beach right here, and just a few rules to follow. And one of them is to have your pet on the leash, easy enough to do. And the other is to clean up after your pet. And rather than having the bag fly out of my pocket in the wind, I've decided to take a little cloth bag and a safety pin, and I just attached it right here to the leash I've already got. And then I can open it up as needed and pull out a bag so that I can clean up after my pet. Here's what you can do with an old t-shirt if you want something special to wear at the beach. Just cut out a triangle, about the right size, doesn't have to be seamed in any way, and tie it on. I like the t-shirts because they're kind of stretchy, and so you can tie it snug enough that it will actually stay on. Okay, so we're dressed, we've got bags, we've got a leash, and we're ready to play. Let's go down, hit the beach. There are lots of areas on the beach that are just so natural and beautiful, and this is where many birds and sea turtles come to lay their eggs and make their nests. And so the leash is really important. You want to keep your dog close to you, reasonably close to you, so they won't bother any of the wildlife. Nick, are you ready? Are you ready? You want to try your water rings? Huh? Okay, here we go. Well, Nick, what do you think? Huh? You did really well for your first big wading day at the beach. I'll bet you're ready for something fresh to drink.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.